Imagine living your life after 50 and feeling energized and excited about your future. Welcome to the Women in the Middle podcast, the podcast for women who are ready to figure out what they want and create the life they deserve. Here's your host and Master Certified Life Coach, Susie Rosenstein.
Hey there, today we're talking about following your passion and becoming an accidental Olympics journalist in midlife. Let's go. Welcome back to the podcast Women in the Middle, where we are all about how to get unstuck, clear, and excited about your next chapter, especially if you're in your 50s and 60s and feeling like life is just way too short to keep waiting. I'm your host, Susie Rosenstein, your Master Certified Coach and Midlife Mentor, and I am so glad to be here with you again. If you're new here, welcome. Thanks so much for listening. It is always such a good time to think about what being a woman in the middle means to you, and more importantly, what you want it to mean to you. But just quick, before we dive in, I wanted to make sure that you knew about my new midlife quiz. It's perfect for you if you know you're meant for more, but you're feeling stuck and can't figure it all out. The quiz is free, fast, and fun. It's also super helpful. So if you want to discover what's been keeping you spinning around like this and learn what your future self is craving, head over to www.midlifequiz.com. All right, now let's dive in. As I mentioned, today's episode is about becoming an accidental Olympics journalist in midlife with my guest, Alison Brown. Alison is the co-host and co-producer of Keep the Flame Alive, the smart and fun podcast of fans of the Olympics and Paralympics. The podcast has been accredited by the USOPC for Beijing 2022, Paris 2024, and Milano-Cortina 2026. You never know where your skills, experience, and passion will lead you. Alison is a former corporate librarian who brings her research skills to every interview and story. Alison teamed up with friend and colleague Jill Jarris, and together they hatched the idea of co-producing this podcast. Alison still dreams of trying every Olympic sport despite having no athletic ability whatsoever. Please enjoy this authentic and inspiring interview about loving the Olympics and allowing this passion to make your life more enjoyable and fulfilling after 50. Hi, Alison. Thanks so much for joining us today on the Women in the Middle podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
You know, we don't often get to talk about the Olympics, and your whole story is so much fun. Certainly, I have always loved the Olympics, so super happy to have you here. Tell me a little bit about what the heck? How did this happen in your life? What was going on for you in your 40s? Where did this come from? Take it away.
Yes, I know. It is kind of a strange, twisted road I ended up on. In my 40s, I was at home with my daughter. She was born in my early 30s, and I had stayed home with her, and she had some health issues, which made going back to work very difficult for me, so that I needed to be available and I needed to focus on that. But like a lot of stay-at-home moms, twiddling my thumbs, not using enough of my skills that I had trained for. I have a master's degree. I was a corporate librarian. I had a whole career before I had my daughter. And in that career, I had made a friend, my now partner, Jill, and we had worked together in an open office and had just talked about the Olympics when it happened, or talked about figure skating championships when they happened. And so that was kind of our water cooler topic. And we had stayed in touch over the years, and we both moved away from where we were. And Jill was working at home. She was freelancing, and then I was home, and we both found ourselves kind of lonely. So we would talk occasionally, and she got the idea of doing a podcast.
Now, what year was that? Like how many years ago, or what year?
So we started the show in 2017, and in September, we had the first conversation probably in June.
Because I have to tell you, I was a late adopter to podcasting. Not only podcasting, but I also started this show in 2017 in July. But I was late to having a smartphone. I remember a friend of mine made fun of me because I still had a flip phone that wasn't smart. And I'm like, I don't even know what a smartphone is really. And I was a BlackBerry user back in the day, and I just
Yes.
loved, the smartness of the phone wasn't really the key part with all the apps and everything. So I was slow. And what got me going with a podcast was watching somebody. I was in a coaching community and she had a show, and it wasn't that, she hadn't had it for that long. And she talked about it a lot, how, you can do this. It just made it so possible. You can do this. And then I started to think, well, I've always loved audio. I loved a tape recorder when I was 8 years old. And it just started to become more doable when you see people doing it. But where did this idea come from for you?
We were both fans of podcasts. I got into listening to podcasts when I got a dog, actually, because I would take the old Nano and put it on podcast and then walk the dog. So I would go through, dozens of episodes in a week. So I was a big podcast consumer. I never had an idea of starting a podcast. That was completely Jill's idea. So I said yes, simply because I loved working with her and I really didn't know what I was getting into.
So it seemed like a fun project that you could do together.
Exactly. And it was manageable with other things because we were doing it ourselves. We had control of the schedule and how much work we did. So it was manageable and I could work it in. And I got to talk to people, which, stay-at-home moms know. You talk to a lot of kids. You don't talk to a lot of adults. And that became the fun part for me. And then it just kind of snowballed and snowballed and snowballed into this much grander project that we're so proud of what it's become.
Oh, I love this story because, there's such a special moment. It's almost I always think of it as kind of tingly. So Jill had to have that idea, and then she had to have enough nerve to give it light and to actually speak it. And I wonder how long she was thinking about it before she spoke it. And then your reaction to it seemed immediate because you were so tired of being alone and you missed your buddy.
Very much so. She had the idea. She tried it first as a blog during Rio in 2016. And that just didn't give her the same interaction. And so the podcast idea was probably in her brain for maybe 6 months before we had our conversation. And once we had our conversation, it was all systems go. She did all the training on the technical things. I started working on how do you market this? How do you get a logo? How do you do any of these pieces? And then we just did a show. And I will never forget recording that first episode. I was terrified. And we were editing, we were not doing anything live, but it was so scary to just sit down and do that first script.
And tell me, was it a solo episode with the two of you, or did
Yes.
that first episode? Okay, so the first one was solo. And at that point, how did you imagine this podcast project to go? And how did you imagine the content to develop? Did you imagine it at all? Because I didn't really. I was just winging it at the beginning.
We really imagined it as produced pieces. So if you listen to the first handful of episodes, which I do not recommend, please do not judge us by the first year. We were researching and creating stories. We were not doing interviews.
Mm-hmm.
The interviews came up because we were going to a pin collector show in Lake Placid, an Olympic pin collector show, and got the idea to interview the pin collectors and then got access to talk to some bobsledders. So it was all very organic in the way that it developed. Originally, we had a trivia piece. We used to ask each other trivia questions, and then we ran out of trivia for each other. And then once we started going, people started coming to us. And we started getting books, and we started hearing about movies, and we started hearing from more athletes. So all of a sudden, we were a sports journalist podcast with no intention of having created that.
Like an accidental one.
We really became sports journalists by mistake.
Yeah.
And I love that in the sense of we still think of it that way. in the sense of we're still fans first. And we still love the athletes and love the sports and love the spectacle of the Olympics and the Paralympics. And even covering the Paralympics was an accident in that some of our listeners said, have you watched any of the Paralympics? No, sure, I'll tune in, and fell in love with some of those sports.
Alison, there's so much here that makes me smile. First of all, what is your sports background? Do you have one?
Very, very minimal. I did gymnastics as a kid. Jill was an age group swimmer. So we were not athletes.
You never considered yourself an athlete. It was more like just a way to get exercise kind of thing.
Right. I mean, as a kid, I dreamed of being Nadia Comaneci,
yes.
but that was about as far as my dream went.
Right.
And I did gymnastics until I got hurt and couldn't do gymnastics anymore. But I was never serious. I was never going to go past the club level. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and the joke is always Jill still does like 100-mile bicycle rides, and she does a lot more activity than I do. And I'm also very clumsy. So the joke is always, oh, I'll try anything. I may end up in the hospital, but you want to put me on a ski jump? I would love to try that. So I love sports and I love athletes, but I could never do it myself in any kind of professional way.
And did you recognize your love of Olympics as just a person?
Oh yeah.
Like, so you knew you loved it. Like when it was coming up, you were always clearing the deck and.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I loved it from when I was little. My first memory that I know is mine, as opposed to what I was told. I was told about my love of Nadia in 1976. But Lake Placid 1980 is such a clear memory for me. Mm-hmm. And we watched it as a family. It was something that we would watch the figure skating, we would watch the hockey. In the summer, we would watch the swimming and the tennis and all these different things. Whether we played them or not, that didn't really matter. We all kind of dabbled in a lot of things.
And would you have considered it a passion? Do you think you would have identified it that way?
I think other people would have told me it was, but I don't think of myself as a collector. Like, I don't think of myself in that kind of brain that I have these passions. But I think if you asked my husband, he would say, you're a little obsessed.
Okay.
Before I even started the podcast.
This is great. So the reason I'm asking these questions, so as a midlife coach, I can't tell you how many amazing midlife women come to me and say, I don't know what I'm passionate about. I don't have a passion. And I have an exercise that asks them to go back over chapters of their life. And as a listener, if you want this, just go to www.susierosenstein.com/passion project 50, passion project 50. And so they're just like, I don't know what it is. So when you go through your life in chapters, a lot of times we would explain our life to people by pointing out some of the challenges and difficulties, like perhaps when your parents got divorced, or when you moved, or when you had a big injury, broke your leg, the year you had to miss camp, something like that. And what I ask women to do is to think about moments of joy in each of those chapters and then look at them and just notice, do I have these things in my life now? Because it's such a clue. What you loved as a kid, you're highly likely to love a version of it. It doesn't have to be the same thing, but a version of it. There's a clue there. And then ask yourself, if you don't have it in your life, why not? And I find that's kind of a hack. It's kind of a sneak attack to get at passion. And it's so interesting that you maybe wouldn't have identified it, but it was so ingrained, and so much of passion is ingrained. Like if you were on a desert island with anybody, do you think you'd eventually get around to talking about the Olympics or your love of Nadia?
I think my real passion is people and talking to people, and also trivia in the sense of the real nitty gritty. I love talking to the athletes and not even so much hearing their stories, which I do, but talking to them about how they do their sport and how their lives work. And how do you get a pole vault on the plane? And how do you travel with a biathlon gun? And what do they eat before they race? So I would say that the passion for me is really talking to people and getting to share that with them. I mean, my family jokes about how I make friends at the grocery store,
Mm-hmm.
that I just start talking to the people. And my daughter has inherited this trait. And she said to me recently, Mommy, people just tell me their stories. I'm like, yeah, if you're open to hearing people's stories, people love to tell you
Yeah.
what you hear this. People love to tell you what they're passionate about.
Oh my God, I'm just like you. And that's how I find podcast guests. I know sometimes if I'm invited to something, I'm like, listen, I just want to have one interesting conversation with somebody. And I bet I'll find a podcast guest, which is great. I can sniff out a good story. The other thing that's so cool, though, is another thing that gets people so stuck is they start to just get overwhelmed because they don't have a complete plan. They don't have the vision, the details of how they're going to do the thing that they want to do. And my guidance is always just take the first best step, which is
Yes.
exactly what your story is illustrating, that it's impossible to know. We crave certainty. We want to know exactly what's going to happen and will it be successful? But it's impossible. But you can get your head around the first step, and then that informs the next best step. And this is so beautiful that you didn't even realize that you were going to be a sports journalist. Yet it would have been impossible. And you would have never even thought you had any business doing that, right?
Oh, absolutely. If you had told me when we started, okay, you're going to be in the mountains of China during COVID, and you're going to have to figure out how to get back to Beijing, I would have been frozen. And yet, when I was going through that, we just did it. So much of what we've experienced is biting my tongue, swallowing my fear, and just going through it. And the experiences I've had through this show has been so life-changing.
I love that. Now, what experience were you thinking of just now?
Well, our trip to Beijing, during the Beijing, I was there for the Paralympics. Jill was there for both the Olympics and the Paralympics. It was during COVID. We were in what was called the closed loop or the bubble. And we became very close to the people at the hotel, the people at our venues. I would have never traveled to China. It was never on my bucket list. It was never something I thought was possible. And here I was there and meeting all these incredible people. And I did get lost on the mountain. I did have to sort of jump into somebody else's cab, which ended up being people who were the forward team from Paris 2024. We did a whole show on my adventures in the mountains because it got so crazy. And I think it goes back to that. I love people. And it leads me to these adventures because I just went up to somebody and said, I'm stuck here. Can I share your cab? What do I do? And 10 years ago, I never would have done it.
10 years ago, you probably, or 15 years ago, I'm just thinking when you started your podcast. I mean, did you think you had any business starting a podcast?
No, I
Me
had no
neither.
idea. I had no idea what I was doing. And I was kind of like, nobody but my mom is going to listen to it. A few friends may tune in and that'll be it. And, I remember we had a meeting, Jill and I, very early on saying, what do you want out of the show? What do you want? And my answer at the time was, I want a community. I want a group of people who I can geek out over this stuff, who get excited when we talk to ice techs about how they make curling ice, or when we talked to somebody yesterday about the wax they use on skis and how it's had to change because the EU banned fluorocarbons. I didn't even know what half those words were when I started.
Right.
But the idea of I want to be around a whole bunch of like-minded people to enjoy things with.
Yes. It's like the Olympic nerds.
Yeah, I'm just a geek at heart. I really am.
Totally. When you were talking about the pins, it made me smile because I was thinking back to Disney World. and the first time we took our kids, and we learned there's this whole pin subculture.
The Disney pins, yes.
Yeah, that you could ask employees and they would switch with you and swap and all the things. And I was like, oh my God, this is hilarious. And I love that it exists.
Yes.
Like hidden Mickeys. So when
Olympic
you said
pins are the same.
It never occurred to me that this was a thing. I don't know the inner workings of the Olympic and related Olympic community. This is great. So you did that. And also, I'm sure you, let alone start a podcast, I don't have a feeling that you thought you'd be making like a really solid contribution.
You know, we do a show every week. We take very few weeks off, and we've been doing it since 2017. During the games, now this will be, wait, now I have to count, 18, 21, 22, 24. So this will be games number 5, where we do daily shows. So this time it's going to be 32. And Paris, it was more than that. I think it was 36, just because summer is longer. So I did not think myself capable of doing something like that and doing the 16-hour days and learning enough French to function in Paris for almost 2.5 months.
Wow.
So it was if I think on it, I get overwhelmed. So I just keep going forward in a way and saying, okay, what's our next challenge? Okay, our next challenge is getting ready for Milano-Cortina for 2026.
Now, what does that mean, getting ready for it? What does that mean?
Okay, so Milano-Cortina, there'll be the Olympics and Paralympics. We're going to have 32 daily shows. So we have to get all our travel arrangements done, plan all that out, do all the pre-work, raise the money, get ourselves educated, do all the interviews ahead of time. So there's all that prep work for doing a daily show. I mean, you do 2 shows, so you know when each show isn't just the recording time.
Well, but thing, there's the prep, but what you're saying is something I don't have. Like, I'm not event specific. So my goal is to get ahead. And with a daily show, you can't get ahead except for booking your guests.
Right. We're getting ahead now in terms of booking our guests. So we have our shows for the next 2 or 3 months until the Olympics start of all our guests. So during the games, we don't have guests. It's the 2 of us on what we've done that day, where we've been, what we've seen, what's happened, because a lot of people don't go. You know, most people don't go, especially to winter. So, but they want that experience of what's happening there that I'm not seeing on television. And that's our niche. Our niche is very much, yes, you can watch the sports on TV, but what don't you see? And how is it getting around the city? And what is really happening if I was there and not the NBC crew who gets a car and a driver and an interpreter and a whole staff? No, it's just the 2 of us doing the show.
And how do you collaborate, cooperate, communicate with those big shots, the formal sports journalists?
It depends. You know, when, for example, last month we had the Team USA Media Summit, where Team USA brings a whole bunch of their athletes, parades them for all the journalists so that everybody gets the content they need leading up to. And this is now our 3rd or 4th time round going to these summits. So we start seeing the same people and start meeting the same people. Oh, how are you doing? What stories are you working on? Which, you know, for freelancers, which outlets are hiring you right now? How's it going? With the people with Team USA, we've made friends. So we needed a favor. And I knew who to ask, which was amazing. I'm sitting there going, I'm getting favors from Team USA. How is this happening? And I don't mean that in a false humility. I mean that honestly, that so often I sit there and I say to myself, this is really cool. This is really fun. And what I was saying before is we never forget that we're fans first. Mm-hmm. And I think that's also our niche, because we're not formal sports journalists. I love the sports journalists. I love what they do.
How open are they to the podcast community? Do they consider the podcast people making solid contributions?
Oh, yes, very much so. Mm-hmm. A lot of formal sports journalists and journalistic outlets have podcasts, NPR, many magazines. They have their own podcasts, so they understand the importance of the medium. And if you're doing good work and you're not getting in their way, they will respect you. That's the big thing with sports journalists. And also, we're very often one of the only women, and certainly one of the only older women there. Sports journalism tends to be a men's game, and young women are breaking in, and there's a lot of women, like Andrea Joyce or Leslie Visser, who I look up to, who were the generation before me. But there aren't a lot of women in the field in general. So it'll be, a 70-30 split with that.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. That was my next question. How do you think being older affects your work? Do you think you're more sensitive to certain aspects of a story, for example?
I think the athletes trust us a little bit more because our approach, most of these kids are my daughter's age.
Right.
And I do think of them as kids. There's very few of them that we talk to that are over 30. And when we talk to them, we sort of joke about the being older for their sport. So we relate to them in that fashion. So I think there is I don't want to say a gentleness because that sort of downplays it, but we are not interested in gotchas. We're not interested in catching people off guard. We want the guests to be very comfortable with us so that they tell us things that we care about. We don't care about the inspirational stories. That's just not interesting. You can get that someplace else.
Yep.
We care about them being comfortable and telling us all the nitty gritty of their daily lives. So I think being older, they kind of look at us as not intimidating, especially in person. I'm 5 feet tall. I am the most unintimidating little old lady that you will see.
Alison, I'm 4'10". You're taller than me.
But there's a certain, especially when you're talking to a 23-year-old guy.
Yeah, there's a mom factor. That's very comforting. That's what it is, right? And it's got to be.
And that's also, I had the mom factor when I was 25. That's just my personality to want to take care of them. So I think that actually helps a lot. And again, I don't mean it disingenuously. I really do. I want to like the people I interview. Yeah. I want to have fun with them. I want to follow their careers. I feel so lucky when we get to interview people, which we have 2 and 3 times, before the games, after the games, when they're going to their second games, when they decide to retire, all those different milestones. We've had a few athletes on multiple times. And that's such a fantastic connection with people. We want them to have fun because most the athletes don't want to do interviews. That's not what they want to do. They're not movie stars. They're not celebrities. They're athletes. So at least let's talk about what they want to talk about.
Yeah, that's so great that you guys have the flexibility to create your own show. There's not all these layers of supervision and art direction or whatever it's called in your field. I have no idea.
Big bosses.
But so you said that it's just the two of you. You don't have a support person going with you?
We do not. We do it ourselves. And that actually, in many ways, creates the show because we talk about on the show what we go through to get places and what our logistics are. And people have really come to enjoy that in the daily shows. They tell us they were so worried. Let me start that over. So in Paris, because of our hotel, we didn't have Wi-Fi at the hotel. So we record the show at night after we've done our things. So in Paris, we were recording the show at the media center, midnight, 1 a.m. We had to take cabs home and back to the hotel. And people were writing emails and messages to us saying, please be careful. Now I'm worried about you taking a cab at 2 and 3 a.m. in Paris. So in the show, it became, don't worry, the doorman is there when we get in the cab, and then it's the official cab, so we're being careful. So we answer to our listeners and nobody else. which is really
I love that.
fantastic.
Yes, that's so good. But it does seem like a lot. When I was thinking you don't have an assistant, I was thinking of transportation glitches and tech.
Yep.
Those are the
Yep.
two things that had me worried.
Tech we have worked out. We did have a couple of times in Paris where we recorded half the show and had to start over. So there have been technical glitches. China was crazy tech-wise, especially when I was still in the States and Jill was in Beijing. We had a whole system that when I look back on it, I don't know how we did it. Transportation is the bane of our existence during the games.
Yeah.
We cross our fingers and hope that we get to where we need to go. And Milan is going to be a real challenge because of the very far distances between the events in Milan and then the events in the mountains.
More mountains.
Yeah. We're hoping for some good trains and some good buses and some good media transportation, but we don't know. We get the guide ahead of time, but we're on our own. It's not like I think people think the media stays in the village or gets to ride with the. No, we don't. We're riding on the public transportation like everybody else.
Right. Wow. Well, in your notes for me to prepare for the call, you talked a few times about imposter syndrome. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that's very much a big thing for me. That was a thing for me before I even did the show, but even more so now because we're not trained as journalists. We're not former athletes. So there's definitely a lot of moments where the two of us will say, we just don't belong in this room. Why are we here? And having a partner in the project with you is so incredibly helpful. And that's one piece of advice I would give to anybody trying something new is get yourself a business partner, because we tend to have our imposter syndrome at different times for different things.
So good.
So yeah. I can look at her and say, just do it. Just go. Just do it. You know, she's very Midwestern and won't just talk to people. And I joke about being the New York Italian American, and I'll just talk to anybody. And she's so good with spreadsheets and tech things, and I'm so not good with that. So yeah, imposter syndrome is huge. And I'll be sitting in an interview, especially early on, thinking, I really don't know what I'm doing. And I'm just going to embarrass myself. But then Jill would pick up that from me and kind of carry the ball until I could get back. I mean, literally during interviews, sometimes we'll just look at each other. At this point, we've been doing interviews together for so long, where we'll know this is not going well. We gotta switch it up. We got to do something different. Or I'm falling behind, or I've lost my place, or let's figure this out. So having a business partner is huge.
It's so good. You can borrow each other's confidence too. And it's another brain on the spot. So good. Now you're making me think that's probably what I should do. It's hard to be alone.
And it also keeps you accountable. You know, there would have been many, many times during COVID, during my daughter's illness, just during life, where I wouldn't have done the show that week. But I didn't have that choice. Jill showed up. And I think she would say the same of me. She had her own family challenges and her own personal things. And we all do. I mean, that's the way life works. Yeah. And knowing the other person is counting on you sounds like a burden sometimes, and sometimes can feel heavy, but on the other hand is such a motivator.
Yeah, this is so good. I really, really enjoyed talking to you. How can people get a hold of you? Where's the podcast? What's happening?
So the podcast is Keep the Flame Alive. We are at flamealivepod.com. We're on Spotify, Amazon, Apple Podcasts, all the good notes. We do a show every week. And then during the games, the Paralympics and the Olympics in February and March of 2026, we will have daily shows.
Wow. And you said the time of day you do the shows is at night?
So this will work well for Europe. So we record at the end of our day. So the podcast will kind of appear on your feed for the daily shows first thing in the morning in the US. So there's that little bit of time lag, which actually works to our advantage.
Wow, that's so cool. That's so cool. Alison, super fun. Thank you so much. I can't wait to listen to you guys during the Olympics. Like, I just think that's super fun. I have never done anything like that. Like, I just catch the regular news. I'm always like really looking for Canadian content. And so I know that that's not what your show will be about, but the kind of stories that you're going to be telling are right up my alley. I love minutia too. I love the backstories. I love all that stuff. And I love learning about new athletes that are just really fun to follow. So good. So
well,
thank you.
We do have our Canadians on the show as well. So we don't just talk to Americans. So we have spoken to, we have an Australian competing in Milan. We have some people from the UK. So we are international as well.
Oh, I didn't appreciate that. That's awesome. Thank you so much. I just love talking to you. I love what you guys are doing. And I forgot to ask, how old are you two?
I am 54. Jill is 53.
Okay. So if you're listening right now, here is yet another story of some amazing midlife gal that didn't even imagine what was possible. And she took a leap. She said yes to something that, I don't know, maybe even seemed a little wacky. It certainly felt out of reach, had no clue what it was going to become. And you just kept leaning into your passion and, I don't know, just relaxed into it. It sounds like you kind of relaxed into it and it just kept opening doors. So thank you so much for joining today and for sharing your story. It's amazing. You're amazing. And I'm super excited to tune in.
Thanks so much, Susie. Great to be here.
That's it for this episode. I have to say, when I hear a story like this, where a midlife gal has connected with a passion and amplified it into a bigger part of her life, so much so that she's super excited, fulfilled, and happy, it just makes me grin my face off. And you could hear it in her voice and in mine. There are so many things you can learn from Alison's experience. Passion can be a funny thing, kind of elusive for many, and, I think it's because it can kind of feel like it's super big and important to nail down and get it just right, like to get it perfect. So it can sometimes feel overwhelming. But what I've heard over and over again, including in this interview with Alison, is that your passion is usually something you're quite familiar with. All that's missing is your ability to notice it and perhaps embrace it more than ever, or in new creative ways. That's where you have the ability to amplify it. Now, there's also a link in the show notes to an episode about how you can have fun with the concept of amplification. That's episode 248. In this case, the Keep the Flame Alive podcast served this purpose. Alison was always an Olympic nerd kind of gal. But to recognize this, own it, think about how to have fun with it in novel ways and then take action, that's a beautiful thing and a great way to invite your passion and more happiness into your life after 50. As I mentioned, the next best step approach works well here, and I've added that link to the show notes as well. That's episode 398. If you would like support figuring out what your passion is and want that process to be fun and intentional, please reach out and let's talk about coaching together. As a master certified life coach and midlife mentor, I offer coaching that is uniquely relevant to women our age, in their 50s and 60s. And I've been working with women like you now for over 10 years. Hard to believe. I've got several options that might be a good fit for you, especially the Women in the Middle Academy. It's the gift that keeps on giving, and finding your passion and purpose like this is something that your future self will totally be grateful for. Head over to www.talktosusie.com. Thanks so much for listening to the Women in the Middle show. Please remember to share it with your friends and other midlife gals that you know would get a lot out of it. My focus as your regret-proofing midlife coach is to help you get unstuck and get on with the good stuff. Being the queen of your brain domain is the best way to be. It's time to stop waiting for the right moment and start creating the happiness, excitement, joy, and fulfillment that you crave. I want to make sure that you remember to check out my new midlife quiz. It's waiting for you, so if you want to discover what's been keeping you stuck and learn what your future self is craving, go to www.midlifequiz.com. For show notes and links, go to susierosenstein.com and click on the podcast tab and look for episode 444. You'll also see a link there for my other show, The Women in the Middle Entrepreneurs, which is all about the reality of running your business when you're a midlife gal. It's also on iTunes, Spotify, and all the podcast places. Let's do this, ladies. It's time for you to put yourself first, one thought at a time. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk to you next week.